let's start with some of the key facts about ASEAN, which I'm pretty sure all of you guys are aware of in terms of ASEAN. Of course, ASEAN is the home for over 680 million people, more than European Union or EU itself. And of course, collectively, ASEAN is already the 5th largest economy in the world, and by 2030 is projected to be the 4th largest economy in the world. It's very significant, and in terms of adoption, which will be touch about the topic, digital adoption is accelerating. Southeast Asia itself added over 100 million new internet users in just the last 5 years. And of course, this year, the region's digital economy is projected to hit about 300 billion US dollars. These are the numbers that, to show how significant it is in terms of ASEAN moving forward. And nearly 60% of ASEAN consumers now prefer digital banking over traditional branches, and 1 out of 3 businesses in the region are already demanding green financing solutions. We will touch about from this session and the next session as well. And of course, it is no surprise that banks are transforming fast. 9 out of 10 ASEAN banks are now prioritizing digital first strategies. CIMB, of course, is at the forefront. And we are talking about AI-driven. We are talking also about financial AI-driven as a financial tools and sharp compliant digital product as well. Of course, and ASEAN currently, just like any other region and any other countries, we are at the crossroads now in terms of facing geopolitical and geoeconomic tensions, and also digitalization is basically redefining industries, and sustainability is no longer an option for most of the companies and business in this particular region. Having said that, let me introduce to you Novan Amirudin, the Group CEO of CIMB Group. Novan, thank you so much. It's a pleasure having you with us today. So for the next 1 hour, we're going to split the session into 2. So we're going to have Novan and I going to talk about the topics in regards to CIMB. After that, we're going to open to Q&A, which I'm pretty sure all of the original members of the media would like to ask questions. So just like what I told Tommy and Novan and Teddy, I'm putting my moderator hat today rather than journalist hat, but worry not. I supply all my questions to Norman, so Norman will be asking questions I need to ask as a journalist. I want to ask first, because let's start with the easiest topic, the geopolitical and geoeconomic tensions. We've seen a lot of numbers being said in terms of tariffs that is impacting this region, from 10% all the way to 45%. Of course, the number has changed depending on the trade deals now. But how, in terms of CIMB, with raising geopolitical and geoeconomic tensions, how CIMB basically, recalibrating its regional risk lens, especially in trade-exposed economies?
Well, Najib, thank you so much, for coming to our office today. Thank you for your time, and also to the media all across the region. Thank you for coming to CIMB and KL today. So yeah, I'm not going to elaborate about the tariffs and the geopolitics. We all know that. Your question about how is CIMB recalibrating? No, I wouldn't use the word recalibrate. At the end of the day, we are a purpose-driven bank, and our purpose is to advance customers and societies in all the markets that we operate. In these times of heightened uncertainty and volatility, we are going to increase, our focus to be with our clients. Because this is a time where there's a lot of uncertainty, it's difficult to predict, difficult to forecast, difficult to do business. This is the time where CIMB is double downing and going to spend more time with our customers. We're going to be traveling more, we're going to be discussing more with our customers, we're going to be finding for ways to provide better solutions in times like this. So if your question is about how are we recalibrating, I would say we are recalibrating by spending more time with our customers, because ASEAN is our home, our purpose is the customers and society, and therefore we're gonna spend a lot more time in ASEAN with our customers.
The trade is such intertwined in that sense, it's very complex. But in terms of tariffs and in terms of the uncertainties that are happening currently, how do you support your clients in navigating the cross-border uncertainties, one thing, and also opportunity you see emerge from the whole situation in this particular region?
So there are a few areas in terms of how we are focused on supporting our clients, reducing uncertainties in times of heightened volatility that we're seeing. And I'll break this down into a few areas. One area is we need to reduce friction. And if we reduce friction, make it easier for our customers to conduct business, to conduct their payments, that would reduce some level of uncertainty. And with that, CIMB is extremely focused on our digital offerings. And we have digital offerings for every customer segment. For retail customers, we have our Octo app that is extremely focused on the fastest and smoothest and safest customer journeys. For the larger mass retail market, including the underserved, here in Malaysia, we have Touch and Go, which is our wallet that serves 30 million customers. And we're going to launch in October a refreshed version of what we call OctoBase, and this is the equivalent of Octo for our consumers. This digital offering will be for companies, and we're going to launch OctoBase in October across the region, and OctoBase is going to be the digital way for our non-retail customers to basically operate. So that is in terms of reducing friction. Another example of how CIMB is reducing uncertainties for our customers is with regards to whenever you do a lot of cross-border deals, what is your biggest headache? It's FX, right? You need to make payments in different currencies, collections in different currencies. You need to forecast, how FX would change, how would you hedge those risks. That's an area where CIMB is basically one of the top players in ASEAN today. We have an extremely strong wholesale and treasury and markets team where FX is one of our main business pillars. I'll give you one example. For those of you in Singapore, I don't know if you're a CIMB customer, but what we do is we guarantee the best FX rate between Singapore and Malaysia. And it goes back to our purpose of advancing customers and society, because we know that there's a lot of people in Singapore who actually send money to Malaysia. You could be a Malaysian working in Singapore, send money back home to your parents, pay your mortgage, pay school fees for some of your family members. And you need to reduce that headache of uncertainty of what the FX rate would be. And we at CIMB guarantee the best FX rate. So that is one product that has been extremely successful for us. When it comes to investments, and when we talk about investments, one area that is discussed a lot is FDIs. We all heard about the Johor Singapore Special Economic Zone. A couple of months ago, Najib, I think when we were speaking in Johor during the launch of the event, CIMB made a commitment that we are going to mobilize 10 billion ringgit of financing over the next 3 years. And 10 billion ringgit, is roughly about slightly over 2 billion US dollars. We've also introduced what we call the ASEAN Passport that allows accelerated onboarding for our ASEAN customers in other parts of the region to be able to onboard into Johor Singapore Special Economic Zone. So that also reduces uncertainties for our customers. One other area that we're a big champion of, CIMB, we're a big investment bank that focus on deals that would benefit our clients. Earlier this year, we closed the first Malaysia-Indonesia mergers and acquisition. Excel Axiata, which is controlled by Axiata here in Malaysia, merged with Smartfren in Indonesia. And CIMB was working on that transaction, which merged those two telcos. And the merger of those two telcos were extremely important in the highly competitive telco industry in Indonesia. But that is one example of how we brought together, two corporates, one from Indonesia, one from Malaysia, together to form a stronger company. So, I mean, those are some examples of how we are assisting our clients to reduce uncertainties in this period of heightened volatility.
I want to touch a little bit about the regional as well, because you mentioned about touch and go. This is my experience, because last month I went to St. Petersburg. Obviously, you cannot use your card and everything in Russia, so I cannot buy anything, cannot pay anything. After that, straight away to Tianjin, China, where I can finally, relax, because there's touch and go and I'll pay. So that's the thing that I'm, and us as a Malaysian in ASEAN can, really feel what is ASEAN is all about in terms of population, right? People as a whole. So this is the kind of things that I think people would like to ask, what more can ASEAN, I mean, from your perspective, from the banking side, can provide to the people around this region? But I want to ask, despite all these headlines and uncertainties, turbulence and all that, what are some of the deep fundamentals of ASEAN that you see, based on your point of view, that the investors should be look at or watching it?
I mean, that's an interesting question. It's in fact, a question that's been asked a lot about, what are the benefits of ASEAN. I think we all know the benefits of ASEAN. I think we all know that it's a young population, rising middle class, fastest growing GDP, attracts the large amount of FDI globally. So we all know the benefits of ASEAN. But I think the one thing that ASEAN hasn't done enough, and it's something that we really need to focus on, and this is something that we're also looking at with our customers. ASEAN is probably not telling enough stories. And let me give you an example. And just compare between markets in ASEAN versus the United States, for example. Let's take Malaysia. Malaysia, we have 30 million people. US has about what, 300? So the population is about 10x the size. But if you compare the market cap of Bursa Malaysia, which is a Malaysian stock exchange, versus the S&P 500, that's like 140 times. It just doesn't make sense. The size of the US financial capital markets versus any market in ASEAN, whether is it the Malaysian stock exchange or the Singapore stock exchange or even Thailand, it just doesn't correlate with the difference in population size between a country in ASEAN versus the United States. And the reason why there's such a big divergence, the US market is so large, is because there's a lot of capital parked there today. There's a lot of capital parked there. You could argue that it's being invested, and the value is a lot driven by the big 7 companies that has a lot of stories to tell. But you compare and contrast that to ASEAN, where there's a lot of ideas, in my view. There's a lot of investment proposition, but we haven't been telling enough stories about what is available here. And I think it's extremely important that we now focus on it, because I mentioned about how the US market is 140 times the size of, say, the Malaysian stock exchange. And if you just look up the numbers, and I've seen this being mentioned a number of times, about close to 30 trillion of US financial assets today, if you add up bond market, stock market, private markets and whatnot, if you just add all those up, about 30 trillion US dollars are held by foreigners. So US is a very big market, but 30 trillion of that financial assets are held by foreigners. Of that 30 trillion number, I recall seeing somewhere that 20% is owned by East Asian governments or East Asian economies. So whether it's in China, Korea, Japan, they own about 6 trillion of US financial assets. Because of the current geopolitics, this capital needs to find a new home. And we in ASEAN need to make sure that we are able to seize the opportunity and get our fair share of that capital. So that's why we need to start to tell better stories, and that is something that we're working on with our customers.
I think Thai media representative just joined us. They have a huge presence in this particular hall. I want to talk about specific countries' operation for CIMB. Let's start off with CIMB Thai first, because CIMB Thai, has had to operate in very competitive and also maturing market in that sense. So, what is your strategy today on CIMB Thai in terms of creating value direction for CIMB Thai and also long-term strategy?
We've been in Thailand for a number of years. It's an important part of our overall ASEAN franchise, despite the challenges that we all know is facing Thailand today. I mean, Thailand is facing a number of economic headwinds due to, I guess, the last big investment cycle in Thailand was petrochemicals and automotive. It's been a while since large investment cycles were done. A lot of reliance on tourism. The tourism numbers have come back, but they're probably not spending like what they used to spend pre-COVID. And therefore, as a result, economic growth, GDP growth in Thailand, is about 1% today. We are facing these issues as well, being an operator in Thailand. But Thailand remains an important part of our overall franchise because it completes the ASEAN proposition for us. So while Thailand is challenging in terms of local economy and economic growth at this point in time, there's a lot of Thai corporates that has been extremely active in terms of going out of Thailand. And we at CIMB, we've been playing an instrumental role in banking all these large Thai corporates in venturing out. I mean, for example, you have the CIMB Group, that is in Malaysia here today via Lotus, and we are, a banker of the large group there. I mean, you see Siam Cement out in Indonesia via Barito Pacific. You see TCC Group in Thailand, in Malaysia and Singapore via Frasers. So you're seeing a lot of activity over the last many years where Thai corporates have been venturing out despite the challenges seen in the local market. We continue to play our role to facilitate all these cross-border flows. But having said that, we still play our role in the local Thai market, just that because of the current headwinds that's being faced, we're seeing a lot of more volume in terms of cross-border transactions.
That is about Thailand. I'm pretty sure there's a lot of questions about CIMB Thai from the Thai representative, which you can ask later on during the Q&A sessions. But I want to talk about Indonesia market because this is very interesting because Indonesia is, of course, one of the major pillars for CIMB itself. But how do you positioning CIMB Niaga for the next decade in terms of growth, particularly in Indonesia, growing middle class and also digital economy?
Well, Indonesia is a large market for us. About 25% of our business today is in Indonesia. We are the fifth largest bank in Indonesia today. But I think one area that would be very exciting for Indonesia moving forward is on Islamic banking. I mean, it's the world's largest Muslim population. But Islamic banking penetration today is only about 8% of the market. Compare and contrast that to Malaysia, where Islamic banking penetration is 50% of the market, and we at CIMB, we've played an integral role in building that to 50%. A lot of lessons learned, a lot of innovation, a lot of new products introduced. We want to take a lot of that learnings into the Indonesian market, where the penetration rate today is a lot lower. So I do see Islamic banking as being a very exciting area for Indonesia moving forward.
You mentioned about Islamic banking. This is very interesting because share with us the vision of having Islamic banking or CIMB Islamic in that sense for Malaysian market, but for Indonesia in terms of the transformation and the vision of transformation, also vision for commercial and also institutionally for Indonesian market? I mean, for the Islamic banking in Indonesia, because you mentioned that the pivot, I wouldn't, we wouldn't use pivot as the word, but in terms of CIMB Niaga Sharia, is that the correct name? How do you see the vision for CIMB Niaga Sharia in terms of propelling more transformation in the Indonesian market?
So you're right, the word pivot is not right, because we've been growing the Sharia business significantly over the last a few years in Indonesia. Islamic banking is extremely important as part of our entire group. I mean, where I see CIMB Niaga Sharia play in the role of the Indonesian market is in the product innovation, in the solutions that we can basically bring to Indonesia itself. I mean, there's a lot of lessons that we have learned from the Malaysian market, marry that together with the domestic nuances of operating in Indonesia, different perspectives, different cultures, different requirements. We want to provide Indonesians with a good alternative towards the banking products that are available today. So I do see a lot of areas for us to play at, because the penetration today is only 8%. The demand is high, world largest Muslim population, and we have the products and solutions to be brought over.
I want to talk also about the because you have experience in terms of operating digital banks in Vietnam, also Philippines. How basically has this operating model contributed to the growth of overall group's overall growth, and also how are you tailoring your approach compared to other ASEAN markets for these two particular markets especially?
So Vietnam, Philippines has been extremely important to us. We have full banking licenses in those two countries. We chose to operate digitally when we started about 5-6 years ago. Today we allocate about 1 or 2% of our capital towards developing the digital banks in Vietnam and Philippines. But the benefit that we're getting from Vietnam and Philippines is not just from those digital banks alone. I mean, those digital banks alone in the fastest growing markets in ASEAN, yes, that's exciting. But to me, what's more exciting is what the lessons that we're learning from Vietnam and Philippines, that we're applying it throughout the entire CIMB Group. I mean, in Vietnam and Philippines, we learn exactly how to operate and to expand digitally, whether is it digital internal processes, digital ways of reaching out to customers, and we are then implementing it as we digitize the entire CIMB Group. So that's one of the first benefits. The second is the way we've expanded. So we've expanded in Philippines via a very unique partnership model. We realized that when we first started in Philippines 6 years ago, if you want to grow organically on your own, it's extremely difficult. What we did was we partnered a number of e-commerce players. The e-commerce players have access to a lot of customers. We then partnered these e-commerce players by providing banking solutions to these e-commerce customers. That allowed us to scale a lot faster than if we would have done it organically. So Philippines, for example, we now have 8 million customers, of which 6 million were scaled via the partnership approach. We are using this same partnership model today to grow in our more conventional larger markets. So for example, Malaysia, Indonesia, we're looking at partnership approaches to also grow our customer base. So it's not just the benefit of the digital businesses in Vietnam and Philippines per se, but it's the learnings that we have developed to be applied across the entire group.
All right, let's talk about digital journey, because I mentioned just now we're going to touch a little bit about digital journey, especially AI, artificial intelligence, and also innovation for CIMB. There's a lot of initiatives under your group, but let's talk about AI, because AI is such a thing now for every industry. But for CIMB itself, how do you incorporate AI in terms of your operation across the region itself, not just for Malaysia, for instance, but across the region? How does AI basically help in terms of your operation?
Yes, we have started that journey. Of course, I want to ensure that we do more in terms of our investments into AI. And it's not necessarily just AI as in a front-facing app in terms of what customers see. It's also AI in terms of how we operate our business, the processes that we currently do. You know, things that are manual, how do we automate it? Things that used to take 5 steps, how do we reduce it to 3 steps? How do we make us more efficient? How do we make us a lot more resilient? That is, you know, how we are looking at AI across the entire organization. I mean, one example is in our risk models today. You know, a long time ago, we have a person building a risk model, using the data, building a regression analysis, and then, you know, building our risk models. But, you know, with AI, it allows us to use data from various sources a lot faster in order for us to build our risk models. In terms of transaction monitoring, you know, how do we use AI to basically monitor transactions, monitor potential scam, fraud, mule accounts a lot faster, a lot quicker, you know, a lot more efficient and better. In terms of call center, when you call a call center, you want to, you know, inquire about your credit card points. In the past, you would have a call center operator navigating across 6-7 screens to tell you how much points you have accumulated from your air miles to your grocery shopping, you know, to all sorts of stuff. But, you know, with AI and chatbots, it allows the customer service operator to give you a much faster answer. So we're looking at AI holistically. So apart from just what you see as a customer, is what you don't see, but makes our processes a lot more efficient. We started on that journey, but, you know, we want to do a lot more.
I want to open the floor for Q&A, but I have one last question. This is in regards to ESG. I mean, in terms of green financing for ASEAN, the transition is quite huge in terms of for this particular region. But for CIMB, how does CIMB basically balance it out between, you know, environmental responsibility and also at the same time economic realities, if that makes sense, in terms of your risk assessment of giving out loans for ESG related projects?
So when we embark on our ESG journey, and we've done extremely well. You know, we first made a commitment many years ago of 30 billion financing. We upped it to 100 billion. And then just a couple of weeks ago, we announced a commitment of 300 billion of ESG financing over the next few years. But when we embarked on this journey, it was never about trying to follow a fad. It was never about trying to win awards. It was never about, you know, just going out there as an IR exercise, you know, to tell everyone that we are focused on sustainability. But it was really driven by real business purpose. We see ESG as future-proofing our business and future-proofing our customers, whether is it their business or their own personal lives. Think about it. If we used to give financing to a company, and that company today relies on a global supply chain, you know, to run their business and to service our loan. Now, if that company gets cut off the global supply chain a few years down the road because they are not ESG compliant, what happens? You know, company will have an issue because they won't have enough cash flow to run the business. We will be left with bad loans. So while it is the right thing to do and it coincides with our purpose of customers and society, you know, we went into ESG also because it is just good business sense. You know, it's to future-proof our business and our customers. We're helping our customers transition from, you know, less compliant or non-compliant to become compliant over time. So this is a, you know, ongoing discussions that we have with our customers all the time, because we do not want anyone to be left behind and to be cut off the global supply chain.